Thank you to Marvel Dice Throne for sponsoring today's video. Marvel Dice Throne is a fast and fun board game fit for all ages. Whether you're just looking for an exciting game date night, a fun family challenge, or to take on your own Avengers team of board game enthusiasts, Marvel Dice Throne is right for everyone. Each player selects one of 8 heroes to face off in head-to-head battles to see who earns the right to take the throne. Gameplay involves strategically rolling dice to activate special abilities, playing unique hero cards to manipulate results, and upgrading your hero board to power your stats. Marvel Dice Throne is a game you're going to want to return to over and over again. Not only will you want to play as all 8 characters, including Loki, Scarlet Witch, Miles Morales, and Captain Marvel, you're also going to want to master each character's special skills and strategy to see how they fare against their opponents. You can support Marvel Dice Throne on Kickstarter today and reserve your copy. Check the link in the description to head over to Marvel Dice Throne Kickstarter right now and get rolling to see who takes the throne. It's the movie that started it all, a small little independent production that kickstarted a Hollywood blockbuster franchise which continues to this day. Hi, I'm Pat Whalen with yet another MCU podcast, and this is Everything You Should Know, Iron Man. I am Iron Man. Everyone knows the famous line that bookends the conclusions of 2008's Iron Man and 2019's Avengers Endgame. But getting to that point was as complicated as the comic book history of Playboy billionaire and philanthropist Tony Stark. In the early 90s, people started to recognize the value in their comic book collections. Naturally, publishers capitalized on this by flooding the market with celebratory issues, variant covers, and special events. This comic book boom became a bubble, which eventually burst by the mid-90s. The industry slump was devastating for Marvel Entertainment Group. It also didn't help that their previous attempts at developing their own IPs into movie franchises didn't go so well. As 1986 Howard the Duck bombed hard, the direct-to-video Punisher and Captain America films didn't fare any better, and the terribleness of Roger Corman's Fantastic Four is the stuff of legends. So in order to pay down their overwhelming debt, the Marvel Entertainment Group decided to punt and sell their film rights of some of their top-tier characters to several different movie studios. New Line Cinema bought the rights to Blade, X-Men and the Fantastic Four were sold to 20th Century Fox, Hulk went to Universal Studios, and I'm pretty sure you already know about Spider-Man going to Sony Pictures. Fun fact about that, Sony paid only $7 million for the rights to Spider-Man, and when you discover that Sam Raimi's 2002 Spider-Man grossed $821 million worldwide alone, you can only tip your hat to Sony. But after all of that, it wasn't enough, as Marvel Entertainment Group, the owner of Marvel Comics, was forced to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Later in 1997, Marvel Entertainment Group was reformed as Marvel Enterprises, with Toy Biz co-owner Ike Perlmutter and entertainment mogul Avi Arad at the helm, as both men saw the value of merging the toy and entertainment sides of the business. In the early 2000s, film producer David Mizell approached Perlmutter and Arad with the idea of Marvel Studios financing and producing their own films. The risk was high, but the potential reward was even higher. During his first few weeks, Mizell had 2 priorities. First, stop the potential sale of Captain America to Warner Brothers and Thor to Sony. He realized the value of keeping the characters in-house. Second was to secure financing for a slate of films that Marvel would produce. Mizell achieved this by partnering with Merrill Lynch, who bankrolled $585 million total, with 6 films at budgets up to $165 million. The majority of the MCU films nowadays still fall around that same budget. For Collateral, Merrill Lynch would gain the rights to a library of Marvel characters, including Captain America, the Power Pack, and Shang-Chi. In addition to Mizell, Marvel brought on Kevin Feige as producer. He had cut his teeth working for Laura Schuler Donner and on a number of Marvel productions, including the X-Men franchise, Daredevil, and the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. Just like that, Marvel Studios was an independent film studio, and they were all set to produce their first film. They had the money, and the filmmaking talent who could shepherd their future projects. All they needed now was their first main character. According to film historian Ben Fritz, Marvel had two options on the table: Iron Man and Captain America. They brought in focus groups, mainly consisting of children, explaining the two heroes' backstory and power set. To the surprise of many at Marvel, the kids chose Iron Man. Now, you need to understand, at that time, Iron Man wasn't a very popular character. In 2005, the year the film was greenlit, only 2 Iron Man issues, the alternate universe Ultimate Iron Man number 1 and number 2, made it in the top 100 books of the year, at 24 and 91 respectively. While he did appear in the New Avengers, which was very popular, the main draw was actually Captain America, Spider-Man, and Luke Cage. Iron Man was created by Don Heck, Jack Kirby, Larry Lieber, and Stan Lee in the Tales of Suspense number 39 in March 1963. Lee has said he wanted to create a capitalist superhero and challenged himself to make a character that even the left-leaning college students who were reading the books would enjoy. It would take the character nearly 5 years to receive his own self-titled series. Tony Stark regularly appeared in the comic books. His self-titled series was published for nearly 30 years, and he made appearances as a founding member of the Avengers. He spent much of his time battling corporate baddies and Soviet enemies, all typically wearing similar suits of armor. In the late 70s, we were given the famous Demon in a Bottle storyline, which saw Tony dealing with personal and mental addictions. More on that in our Iron Man 2 episode. It wasn't until the 2000s that Tony came into his own when it was time for a tech-based hero in a modern world. Writer Warren Ellis and artist Adi Granov published the 6-issue storyline Extremis, upon which this film and Iron Man 3 are based. Again, more on that in a future episode. Ellis modernized Tony Stark as a weapons manufacturer who was kidnapped and injured by Afghan terrorists. Following the success of the Extremis storyline, Tony became a leading player in the 2006 to 2007 Civil War storyline. Scripts had been produced for potential adaptations by Universal Studios and New Line Cinema. Jon Favreau, who had previously helmed the Ben Affleck star Daredevil, was brought on to direct. Art Markham, Matt Holloway, Mark Fergus, and Hawk Otsby are all credited as screenwriters, and various comic book writers, including Brian Michael Bendis, Joe Quesada, Mark Miller, and Tom Brevoort, were called on to consult, while Adi Granov's art inspired the look of the film. The script was not quite finished when it came time to film, which led to much of the dialogue being improvised by Robert Downey Jr. But Downey Jr. wasn't the first choice for the armored suit. Tom Cruise and Nicolas Cage were rumored early on. Favreau even wanted Sam Rockwell, who would eventually star as the villain Justin Hammer in Iron Man 2, as the lead role. It was only after Robert Downey Jr. screen tested for the role that Favreau petitioned for the beleaguered actor, who had had a successful career in the late 1980s and early 1990s before substance abuse and legal issues derailed it. Favreau felt that that history could help Downey Jr. fully embody Tony Stark's own troubled backstory. Rounding out the cast was Jeff Bridges as the villainous Obadiah Stane, Gwyneth Paltrow as love interest Pepper Potts, Terrence Howard as Tony's best friend James Rhodes, and Favreau himself as bodyman Happy Hogan. The film sees Tony, a brash wonderkin, captured and injured by terrorists. The life-saving surgery also allows him to power various suits of armor. We see the evolution of the bulky Mach 1 to the classic red and gold Mach 3 armors. Eventually, Tony does battle with Bridges' Stane, a mentor and father figure who's hell-bent on removing Tony from the company and taking it over. Samuel L. Jackson makes a brief cameo in an end credits scene as super spy Nick Fury, in a full-circle call-out to the Ultimates comic series, an alternate universe take that saw artist Brian Hitch design the character to look just like the actor. The scene would tease a far bigger world than anyone had seen in a comic book movie before. In hindsight, the real-world take on a character featuring guns, missiles, Afghan terrorists, and corporate espionage feels out of place compared to the bombastic and colorful takes of the movies in the present-day MCU. Warner Brothers' Batman Begins had successfully shown you could integrate superheroes into the real world, and The Dark Knight, which premiered only 2 months after Iron Man, only confirmed that again. Robert Hanks, a film critic at The Independent, even called Iron Man quite possibly the most effective commentary on the war on terror that Hollywood has produced so far. Iron Man was distributed by Paramount Pictures and released on May 2nd, 2008. The film grossed $585 million globally, finishing in the top 10 for the year. The rest, as they say, is history. Iron Man is now a cultural icon. The film spawned not only 2 direct sequels, but also 24 additional films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, propelled Robert Downey Jr. back into stardom, and created new heroes for a generation of fans. If you're interested in reading more about Iron Man, check out our recommended reading video, which includes Iron Man, Ironmonger by Denny O'Neil, Iron Man the Iron Age by Kurt Busiek, with art by Patrick Zurcher, and The Invincible Iron Man, a 2008 follow-up to the film by Matt Fraction. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this look back on 2008's Iron Man. Let me know in the comments what your favorite part of the Iron Man story is, and if I missed anything. Thanks again to Marvel Dice Throne for sponsoring today's video. Remember to check out the link in the description to support their Kickstarter. As always, I'm Pat Whalen with yet another MCU podcast from Forgotten Entertainment. We'll see you next time.
Next time, baby.